So, now that you're all fully asleep and doing a very good job keeping your eyes open while you do it, let's talk about just a little about what this might mean for self-storage. Well, the first thing, of course, is you're going to have a changing customer base. You're going to have fewer students and transients. You don't have very many students now, as I understand it, but you're going to have fewer students and transients in the general population. People aren't going to move as much. Why? Because there are going to be lots of jobs where they are. In fact, there are going to be more jobs than people everywhere. Whether it's a job they want or not is a different question, but there are going to be more jobs than people there already are in most of Atlantic Canada. You're going to have more new arrivals, so there are going to be lots of containers coming off and no house to put the furniture in, so they're going to need a place to stay. You're going to have significantly more seniors, and you're going to have significantly more apartment and condo dwellers, because quite frankly, what happens when people get older? They move closer to the amenities. They move closer, to particular, to medical services. And you're going to have fewer home-based businesses. Listen to that observation very carefully. You're going to have fewer home-based businesses. In other words, all those companies that are running out of their basement who are renting space from you so they can maintain their inventories are going to disappear. Why? Well, think about why many of the home-based businesses were created in the first place. We funded early retirement. People were leaving workplaces at 50 and 55 with lots of productive time left to them, a pension that allowed them to the freedom to experiment with certain things, and the need to keep busy. So they created companies. We had instances where high unemployment rates and no other options, so they created their own companies in order to sustain themselves. Those two things are fundamentally going to go away. It's not that people aren't going to be allowed to retire. Certainly, Freedom 55, if you're ready for it and can fund it, you're going to take advantage of it. But the simple fact is that most companies, most governments are going to find every possible inducement they can to convince you to continue to work. So they're going to drag you kicking and screaming to the workforce as long as they can, 65, 66, 72, 75. You're going to see the age at which you can start to claim CPP go up. You're going to see the age in which you can you qualify for government pensions go up. You're going to see the penalties for early retirement increase. So in other words, if you used to be able to go, the old math with some of the public sector pensions is the rule of 80. You know, if you're 55 and you've worked 25 years, you can retire. Those rules are going to get tougher. And if you think I'm trying to scare everybody, let's remember that part of the Nova Scotia budget just a few months ago changed that rule. They made it tougher to retire for future entrance to the workforce. And that's just the beginning. So you're going to have fewer home-based business, a lot fewer, because they're not going to have to do that in order to sustain themselves, and their employers and the governments of the places in which they live are going to do everything possible to get in their way. What does all this mean for self-storage? Let's talk about government interaction. There's going to be fewer subsidies and fewer tax incentives for industries of all types, and they're going to be delivered differently. If you have zero unemployment, you're not going to pay people to create jobs. Government in particular is having a real hard time understanding this. But the fact is, if there's nobody to fill the jobs, why would you pay somebody to create them? So that's going to happen. Bad news, we're going to have higher taxes. Why? Because there's going to be fewer taxpayers. And service cuts are the one thing that all governments are allergic to. So once they've created something, they have a real hard time cutting it back. Those of you who live in HRM are intimately familiar with the growth in the municipal budget over the last 10 years. It's grown far and away beyond the rate of inflation, with no justification other than we had 3 elections in that time, and no politician likes to tell people that the bacon's not coming. So we're going to have higher taxes, and they're going to be consumption-based. They're going to shift to things that you buy and taxing it more. So the GST that we got to cut there a couple of years ago, forget it. It's going up. That's the only direction it's going to go. Why? Because there are fewer income earners, and so as a result, income taxes are going to be less attractive. So they're going to go after the consumption. There's going to be expanded use of self-regulation models. Why? Because there's going to be fewer public servants. If they can't hire inspectors and regulators, they're going to hire you to do it for them. And there's going to be lower or changed local service levels. Level of snow plowing, street cleaning, time for permitting, policing levels. All of these things are going to change or be significantly different. They're going to start replacing cops with cameras. They're already doing it. What else does this mean for self-storage? Well, let's talk about market trends. Over the last couple of weeks, people have generously supplied me with a whole bunch of copies of Self-Storage Canada. I've been reading since the last 3 years of issues. And interestingly enough, you already all know what the market trends are going to be. You're already experiencing the changes that this demographic shift are having and are going to exponentially increase over the coming years. So there are going to be lots of cheap, empty buildings to retrofit. Is there a local school in your community that you kind of look at and say, wouldn't that be nice? Wait a few years, it's going to be empty. There's going to be a high urban demand and soft rural growth because, of course, you're going to find urban schools in particular are going to come up for open. Light industrial, anything in the suburbs is going to start to decline simply because they're not going to be able to find the resources to find the people to staff it. Money will be cheap, labor will be expensive. So it'll be an inverse of the situation we have today. There'll be more demand for RV space. There's an interesting observation. Why is that? Well, because while we see these people shifting from income earners to retired people, they're going to have a resource reallocation. As they pass away or as they kind of move out of the workforce, they're going to buy these toys and they're going to have a place to put them. And since they've sold the house and moved into a condo, they can't exactly park it on Barrington Street. So they're going to be looking to you folks to help them. You're going to see longer-term rentals. Again, part of the reason is because with the expansion in condo and apartment dwellers, most of those things don't come with a lot of extra space. People are still going to like their toys, and just like politicians, once they have a toy, they don't like to get rid of it. And so they're going to need space, and they're going to need long-term space. But it's going to be a higher cost to build, and in particular, there's going to be higher costs to staff. Why is it going to be higher cost to build? Because all of your tradespeople are going to cost more. All those costs are going to go up. So while it's going to be cheap to borrow the money, it's going to be expensive to buy the concrete, the steel, the land, what have you. And you're going to see more automation. Now, this is my last slide, and I like to do this because while I do target the presentation around the industry that I'm talking to, we all are people too, right? We're taxpayers, we have families, we have grandkids, we have kids, we have neighbors, we have friends, that kind of thing. So what does this possibly mean for you and your family? Well, the good news is my kids are going to have no problem at all finding a job. They're going to be able to cherry pick, and they're going to get paid a premium for it. So job opportunities and higher wages are going to be the natural result of the demographic shift. Problem with that is that we're going to have a smaller tax base, so we're going to have higher tax rates. So if you think the high-end marginal tax rate being introduced at $37,000 is a little crazy, wait until we introduce it at $18,000, or wait until we double it. There's going to be fewer income earners, and so there's going to be more consumption and higher property taxes. If you think your municipality is messing with you now, just wait a few years. Wait until the federal government runs out of cash and stops giving it to the provinces, and the provinces stop giving it to the municipality. Not cut it back like in the 90s. Stop entirely. Then your municipality is going to get serious about digging into your pockets. Going to have less tax revenue, so there's going to be more private pay or co-pay options. We're already seeing that, even in Nova Scotia, even under an NDP government. We're seeing public-private partnerships and public funding of private delivery of healthcare, education, child services. Now remember that. We're seeing that in Nova Scotia under a socialist government, the engagement in the private sector to deliver these things. Why? Because they have no choice. This isn't an exercise in saying we want the world to be a particular way. It's an exercise in recognizing the reality of the world in which we live. We're going to have smaller government, and so we're going to have declining. And notice I have declining in parentheses, or in quotation marks. What I mean by declining is they're going to have to get out of the business of doing certain things. They're simply going to have to stop. Why? Because they need those people to do other more important things. And we're going to have different services. So again, you're going to see more focus on P3, you're going to see more focus on public funding, you're going to see more focus on monitoring, measurement, and accountability, as opposed to actually delivering the services themselves. And now that I've scared you all, and 3/4 of you looking around going, is that really true? Is that not going? That's the end of the formal portion of my chat. And how did I do in terms of time? There you go. Not too bad at all.